Alright, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. For anyone interested in how my legacy experiment went, I am taking a pause on it. I went 4-1 with the Reanimator deck. It's a fine deck. I made a small profit, but I really didn't enjoy it because it wasn't really my deck. It was my spin on someone else's deck, and I haven't been able to crack the code for the format in the sense of I haven't been able to find what I would enjoy, which is a kind of old school control style deck that will function in Legacy because the threats are too varied and too quick, and the die roll has a very heavy win the game component associated with it. And so I just decided I would take a break. Funny enough, my experiment with the Singleton Vintage format, which is a format that I still think is super fun and hopefully I would love to generate some interest in. That format felt like when I was playing, I felt way more in the game than I did against, like I had more agency, I guess is what I'm trying to say, than I did in Legacy. Legacy felt very much like all my plays were essentially scripted by my hand, and I won or I lost, Force of Will or not, Days or not, Wastelands or not. It was just very, it just felt very paint by the numbers, I guess. And while I recognize that there is some room for gameplay, I certainly had a couple games where I was able to do some interesting things. Overall, that wasn't my experience, and I didn't particularly enjoy it. Neither in the deck construction phase, which felt kind of feels shoehorned into certain strategies, or there's a wide variety of winning strategies, but regardless of what color combination you select, within that color combination, while there may be a wide variety of strategies available to you in Legacy as a whole, so it seems like a healthy format, within the combination of colors you select, generally speaking, there's a superior strategy and then inferior versions. And unless you have a specific reason to play the inferior ones, like you, for whatever reason, expect a particular metagame that they're good against, you basically are forced to play the superior version, or else risk just losing to other decks that are playing the superior version. It's very, very much kind of like the prisoner's dilemma, where you have to do the best thing, or else you're just going to lose to other people doing the best thing. That impression could be wrong. I haven't put enough time into Legacy, but having said that, I feel like, unfortunately, Commander is also kind of suffering from that. But it's been a few months since I played Commander, and I do enjoy the format, and I figured I would return to it. Mostly I wanted to see if I could improve on the Bullszat deck, on the red-black deck, what new tech we might have available. We've got a new format, some more sets coming, and I thought, well, what changes would I make to the deck, to keep it pretty good as we approach the next set, to keep it current. And I've made those changes, and I thought I would share those with you. So one of the new cards that's interesting to me, because it's 5 manas, which is just a ton of mana for this format, but one of the new cards that really feels real strong in this deck is Chaos Defiler. So Chaos Defiler is this thing here. It's from Warhammer40k. And it's a 5/4 trample that is an artifact, so you can play it off of a Mishra's Workshop. And it says that you can also copy it if you have a copy effect, so you got to be watching out for that. But it says when it comes into play, for each opponent, so in 1v1, that's just, choose a non-land permanent that player controls, destroy one at random. Excuse me. Because it's for your opponents, obviously this would be good in multiplayer as well, but the important thing here is that because it's for your opponent, they can't be deflecting swatted back to, they can retarget this effect, but they can't retarget it to your stuff, which is kind of neat. More importantly, though, this thing triggers the effect when it enters the battlefield or dies. So if it's not exiled by like a Swords to Plowshares, then this thing's going to fire again. And of course we have a lot of sacrifice mechanisms, including our commander. So if we need to get this thing to fire a second time, it can be pretty easy, as simple as tapping a Phyrexian Tower on your opponent's turn or something along those lines. So that gives us a a very strong. It kills non-lands, so it's a very strong card for black-red because it means that we can actually remove enchantments, which we could already do, but it was, there are few and far between are the number of cards that are actually good at doing that. So having another card that is good at doing that is fantastic. Card reminds me a lot of Flametongue Kavu, for those of you who played back in the day, where Flametongue Kavu would just come down and completely swing the tempo of a game. This thing can do that on a whole different level. It is a slow card, so it's not like necessarily a solution to like a Soul Ring, right? Unless you have a really fast start yourself to get it down. But a lot of times the payout that comes from your opponent getting a fast start, if you can get the mana to play this, you might be able to interrupt that payout. And then they want to follow up with another big play, like get another good permanent into play, but they're looking at this thing thinking, well, if I do that, then I'm going to lose whatever my follow-up is. So then they have to kill it so that they can play their follow-up, but then when it dies, you take out their mana, so now they can't play their follow-up, and so it creates this really strong swing to get you back from behind, which is one of the things that makes it really cool, and of course to apply additional pressure when you're ahead, which is pretty nice. Another change that I made to the deck is that I've added, I don't recall if this was in the last video, it's been so long since I've done a Commander video, but I'm not using Orcish Bowmasters. I am using Cast Into the Fire instead. First of all, Cast Into the Fire exiles, so it takes out Chaos Defiler and the One Ring. Obviously we don't love exiling a Chaos Defiler because we're already down a card when that happens, but it does give us a little answer to things like that. I use that as an example. Most importantly, at 2 mana, it can take out an early Soul Ring or Mana Crypt and keep you from falling too far behind. It also does 1 damage to each of up to 2 creatures, which means that it can kill an Orcish Bowmaster and its companion with a single card, much like Fire and Ice could do, provided that the creature you're killing the orc hasn't already grown. But at least you can take out Bowmasters and possibly something else, or against green you can take out 2 Mana Dorks or whatever. Now to use that ability you do have to have 2 creatures in play, but fortunately we do have Rog, so worst case scenario, if all they have is like a Bird of Paradise and we really want to kill the thing, we could just kill our Rogra and their bird and then have to replay Rog later, and that is not the best. It would be nice if it said up to 2. Deals 1 damage each of up to 2 target. Actually, hold on a second. Each of up to 2 target. Okay, so correction. You shouldn't have to do that. Up to 2 target creatures. So you can. I believe you should be able to target a single creature with this. That somebody in the comments can confirm that for me. I apologize. I probably should have looked that up first before I started talking about it. But I believe you might be able to actually just target a single one. But what you can't do, like you can with Fire Ice, you're not dividing 2 damage between 2 targets of up to 2 targets. So you cannot, while you can do 1 and 1, you can't do 2 to a single target. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Regardless, pretty solid card. Anytime it's cheap and removes a artifact, it's a solid card. But we already had an answer to the One Ring in without running this card. Of course, we still have like the potential to solve it by Anger's Rampage and making him sacrifice an artifact, is provided the One Ring was the only one that they had, which often wouldn't be the case because typically it's run out there through fast mana sources. But if you could eliminate most of the others, or all the others rather, and then play a Rampage, you could take out a One Ring. We also have Karn, which can lock it down. We also have do we have anything else actually that deals with it? Now that I think about it, not really. I guess though that's it. So we have 1, 2, 3 answers now for the One Ring. If I'm missing something, let me know. But it's good to have multiples, right? Because the card's super powerful, and it's even more powerful in Commander than it is in like Legacy, where the card is also played, or Modern, where it's also played, or Vintage. In Commander, because of the 40 life. So you just want multiple solutions to it, and having something that's flexible like this is a good choice, I think. So we've got Cast Into the Fire, took out Orcish Bowmaster. I had black. I had Douthie Voidwalker. Took that out. Don't really need it. It's a fine card. It's not a insane card. It's not. There's nothing particularly wrong with the card, but there's nothing particularly right with the card either in this specific format. It can do great things. Douthie Voidwalker can keep them from using a graveyard-based strategy, but for the most part, the 2 toughness on it means it's fairly easy to remove before it becomes too problematic for just about anybody. The timing has to be right. Like if they already have stuff in their graveyard, it doesn't exile it at that time. And while you can do cool stuff with it, like play the Voidwalker, Thoughtseize a big monster out of their hand and then play it for free, that is super cool. But you frequently will not be doing that because highly tuned decks are dumping their hand very quickly, and it's not a card that I felt was critical to the way that this deck functions. It doesn't have a specific purpose in this deck in advancing the game plan of removing mana sources or stripping cards from their hands so that they can no longer kill you with them, right? So that's what this deck tries to do, or refueling you. It doesn't do any of those things unless it does it by luck, unless you happen to somehow kill their Soul Ring and then use it to play a Soul Ring, and now it ramps you or something like that. So Voidwalker's out, Bowmaster's is out. I can't remember what the other cut was, but I will tell you what the last 2 cards that have been added are. They are Broadside Bombardiers. This card is actually, I wasn't sure about this card because it looks kind of bad at first blush. 2/2 haste that kills my own stuff to deal 2 plus to sacrifice permanence value to any target. Okay, well, so I swing in and I throw a Rakdos Signet at my opponent and I deal 4 to them. That's great if I was playing Burn, but why would I want to play that here? Like, I don't want to be sacrificing my stuff to try to cut down somebody from 40 life to 0. But the reason is it's any target. And it has Menace and it has haste, right? So it's the combination of all 3. So the fact that you can, for example, let's take like the Boogeyman for this deck, which is Minsk and Boo, one of the more challenging decks for this deck to deal with, or for any deck to deal with for that matter. Clearly a ban-worthy commander, incidentally, as is this one. But let's say that the opponent has like a Minsk and Boo. You could potentially, you go turn 2 Talisman or whatever, and then they throw out their Minsk, they make a 4/4 Boo, and they hold it back to block. Well, if you hit 3 mana, you could play the Bombardiers, swing in. They can't block because it has Menace. You throw your Talisman at Minsk and deal 4 damage to it and just kill it on the spot and then hit them for 2 damage, right? Or maybe you have a 0-drop. So maybe you don't have a Talisman. Maybe you have like a Chrome Mox that you don't imprint or something. Or maybe you have a Curse of Opulence in play. You play Broadside Bombardiers and you swing. You get a token. You sack that treasure. You deal 0+2 to Minsk, and then they can't block. Boom, you hit it for 2 more, and it dies. So having that ability to take out, basically, this is a Planeswalker killer is what I'm getting at. So having a Planeswalker killer that also kills potentially multiple creatures, commanders, other problematic things. Minsk isn't the only problematic Planeswalker out there, clearly. Look at Tevish, right? So having that capability is extremely strong. And the Bombardiers have been very nice in here. They get even better, of course, when you put Chaos Defiler in your deck, because now you have a way to sacrifice the Chaos Defiler. You can throw 7 damage at a target and Vindicate something, a non-land, which is amazing. But it's not just for that. You can also do things like get rid of a One Ring when it's become inconvenient, or a Mana Vault that's dealing too much damage to you, or a Mana Crypt that's no longer quite your friend anymore, or whatever. So having that capability is pretty sweet as well. Then I've also added, I have Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Don't recall if that was in there before. Basically, this just gives you the sweet little curve of hitting 3 mana, Fable, and then on the next turn you attack, you get a treasure and play a land, and you've gone from 3 to 5, which means it ramps you straight to Tevish. Just a good card. It also has the card selection built into it, and now with the ability to flip and transform into Reflection of Kiki Jiki. In the past, we didn't necessarily have anything that we would want to copy particularly much, but if you have a Broadside Bombardier and you copy this thing and you swing, One bombardier can sacrifice the other. You can deal 5 for 1 mana. You can just deal 5 damage to any target. You can also copy Chaos Defiler, which is just gross, right? Like, you copy it, kill something when it comes into play, then you swing for 5 points of trample, and then it dies and kills something on the way out. There's no game to play if that keeps happening. Very quickly, maybe even it happens once, it's lights out, but certainly if it continues to occur, right? So, yeah, so Fable's super good, and then Jessica's Will is kind of in a placeholder category right now. I think this card, it's been in the deck before. It has insane early game potential. You can just get draws with this where it's coughing up, 5, 6, 7 mana in the first turn or two, and also basically drawing 3 cards. It's giving you it's giving you the potential to generate 3 additional cards with it. You'll typically get, I would say, you average getting like somewhere like 1.5, maybe 2 cards out of this. You don't typically get all 3. If you hit 2 lands, you can only play one of them and then maybe the other spell. You might hit a land and 2 spells, but one of them is removal and the other one's removal, but there's no target for both. So, you typically get like somewhere around 1.5. Like, you get about half of the 3 cards that you get. But it can often cost, maybe they only have 3 cards in hand, but then it's basically 0 to draw 1 to 3 cards. It's not horrible, and sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's absolutely nutty, right? Like, sometimes you just play this on turn 1 off a Mana Crypt and grab 7 mana and play God Pharaoh's Statue, and your opponent just packs it in. The game's over. Having that kind of potential is always a reason to look at a card. But it also is good mid to late game where you might be kind of in top decking mode and you draw this thing and you're like, I'm not going to get any mana for this because we're both top decking, but I get to go 3 cards deeper, even if they have a card like Notion Thief or Orcish Bowmasters in play, like suppressing you, because it's not a card draw. It also has some small synergies with a card like Lelia, the Blade Reforged, which is kind of nice. And, because you're exiling the 3 cards, so it will actually trigger it. It's like a permanent giant growth kind of a thing. Although, if you have Lelia running, you're generally already way ahead. If you're Jessica's Willing, you're generally doing very well. So, like, putting them together is it's a snowball effect in which you're just, like, way, you're miles ahead at that point, typically. But maybe not that, like, critical of a reason to put it in the deck, because that's sort of that you sort of like don't want to plan. It's kind of like saying, Brain Geyser's even better when I have Gilded Lotus in play. Well, yeah, sure, but how is it without the Lotus, and how's the Lotus without the Geyser, right? You're not always going to have these 2 things together. So yes, the 2 are very good together, but they're both good independently, which is, I think. But if we end up, this is a flex slot, so if we end up, like, if there's a card you prefer, or if there's a card that we find that's going to be better in some upcoming sets, this will be one of the first places I look as a potential cut to the deck. Now, what's not in here, another card that's not in here, it's in the Cast Into the Fire slot I mentioned earlier. I mentioned some of the cuts. Another card that's been cut is Inti. I was kind of raving about it. The card seems amazing. I really like the card a lot. If you're not familiar with Inti, first of all, as a legend, it powers Honor-Worn Shaku, and secondly, it just gives you like this looting and card selection that's really, really nice. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, a creature gets +1/+1. It gains trample. And whenever you discard 1 or more cards for any reason, so even if we had, for example, discarding 2, let's say, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, right? You exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next end step. But the thing about Inti is I found that I would loot, so I would discard a card and then reveal the top card of my library, and then it would be a card I couldn't play for whatever reason. And so what I was actually doing sometimes was converting bad cards in my hand into good cards. So like I might be discarding, like I'm holding Death Cloud and I'm kind of mana screwed, and I attack with Inti or a Rog, and I have an Inti in play, and I trigger it, and then I discard the Death Cloud that I can't cast, and my top card is land, and I'm like, yes, and I play the land, and that's great. That's a really good feeling. I've just Merfolk looted away a card and increased the pressure on my opponent into a play, right? But sometimes it was the reverse. So sometimes I was like, everything in my hand is great, I don't want to loot at all, or I would be in a situation where I would swing and I would discard, say, I'm holding 3 lands, so I'll discard 1, and I would discard one of them, and then I would flip up that Death Cloud, and I'd be like, it's way too early in the game, I don't even have the mana for this, and I'm not in a good position to use it yet. And so I'm now discarded a card to put +1/+1 on a creature, and exile a late game play that I can no longer tutor for, or strategically hold for the right time to strike. And I paid a card to do that. Like, basically, Inti was turning cards into +1/+1 with no benefit, with no upside sometimes. Other times it was great. And the problem I had with the card was that I don't like cards that are sometimes great and sometimes garbage. I want cards that are always going to perform at least at a minimum level of, this is good enough for what I expect it to do, maybe with certain caveats. Like, clearly Necropotence is pretty bad if you're at 1 life, but, the range of scenarios in which a card isn't performing needs to be, or, I would say, like, the Soul Ring is clearly bad when you already have 13 mana in play, right, and no cards in hand. But the range at which a card is bad needs to be small enough that I'm willing to put it in the deck, and the range that Inti was bad felt slightly too high for me. I really want the card in the deck. I feel like the card's really good. Like, maybe it should be the Cast Into the Fire, because especially with the Bombardiers and the Chaos Defiler and the addition of Fable and everything, the deck is a lot more aggressive than it used to be. You can definitely beat someone down very quickly and just get a win. But on the other side of things, I don't know, man. Every time that I intied away, like, as I was emptying my hand away, I wasn't loving it. It does have a sweet interaction, of course, with Fable that I pointed out when I first added the card, in that if you discard cards, you then, for Fable, you're going to draw more cards, and you get to potentially play even more cards because of the Inti effect. It has a sweet interaction with Lelia, where you'll discard a card, you'll attack with Lelia, exile the top card of your deck for Lelia, and +1/+1 Lelia from its own ability. Then Inti will let you discard a card, which will then proc Inti's play the top card of your library effect, and then Lelia will get another +1/+1 from the Inti, as well as from the fact that you now exiled another card. So with Inti and Lelia, just attacking with Lelia, it goes from a 2/2 to a 5/5, and you discard 1 card, and you have 2 cards on top of your library that you can play. But if you take Inti out of the picture, Lelia is still great, right? Like, it swings, it can do the thing I mentioned where it can, like, exile cards, late game cards early that you don't want to play. Like, you might attack with this and exile your Abrade, and then on their turn they play their Soul Ring or whatever. That part can suck, but this is costing you random cards you may or may not have access to, while Inti was making me discard cards I did have access to. It was costing me realized value rather than potential value, and that felt like just a little bit too much for me. Great card. I'm very drawn to running it. I'm sure that there are decks where this belongs, like any aggressive deck filled with, like, bolts and stuff. Love it, but maybe not in the control deck. Maybe not, right? Anyway, having said all that, although it is a sweet way to make ROG a little bit more threatening too, but having said all that, I think it's fine. Honestly, like, I would even consider running Jitte back in this deck, just because with the addition of more threats, the deck's a little bit more scary, but I don't think we need it yet. I think the Westfell Abbey's doing the job that Jitte was doing a little bit better, because most of the time we just need it to be mana, and some of the time we need it for life, or tokens, or whatever. So I don't think we need the Jitte in this particular build, and I don't think we need the Inti in this build. So how's the deck doing? Well, it's gross as always. You know, I always advertise for. I always advertise, like here. I always say CEDH and Legacy. Put my thing in there, or I say CEDH. But CEDH is always in my comments to make sure that I'm trying to do my best to help people filter out the kind of experience that they're going to be getting when they join up with my games. But yeah, if you take a look at the last 7 days and format selected just Commander, what you'll see is that I had a loss here. This guy actually said, hey, I'm not... I joined his game, and he had a comment saying he was looking for mid-range power. And he goes, dude, that's not mid-range. And I was like, dude, you're right. I sorry, I didn't see your comment. So I just conceded. And then I lost one game here, I think it was, in which I literally mulliganed to 2. I couldn't draw any mana. Like, how the deck that runs like 50 or 60 mana couldn't draw any, I don't know, but that's what happened. I mulliganed to like 2, and then okay, sure. But outside of those 2 losses, it's completely undefeated. It's just crushing. So, you know, I'll run through, I think, with that in mind, I'll go ahead and just run through the games for today. And we'll take a look at, you know, how it's operating. There was a test card in that, I did have a test card for some of these games in the Jessica's Will slot, as I often do. And the test card that I have, I'm still kind of interested in. It felt pretty good, to be honest. It is this card. Let's see if I can get it to come up. Staff of Completion. So this is a card I wouldn't ever really consider in any format but Commander, but because of the 40 life. But tap to pay 4 life to draw a card is basically a colorless Sylvan Library, right? Like, however, this thing also kills permanents you own, which can be relevant. You can get rid of your Necro and all the other things that we might want to get rid of. Kill our Chaos Defiler if you need to proc it, that kind of stuff. Pay 2, or if they steal something, you can kill it because you own it, they control it, you just kill it. Pay 2 life to add 1 mana of any color. So this is a 3 mana rock for a little bit of life. And Proliferate matters because we have things like Fable and Saga and, well, Archimander, Tevish, and the Ready and Liliana and all these other things that we're happy to put counters on, actually. So the Proliferate is not nothing. Occasionally can just cause you to Tevish Ultimate brutally. And then the 5 mana untap it. 5 mana is like, I mean, is that ever going to come up? Who has 5 mana laying around like unspent doing nothing? But maybe. Mostly the pay 4 life draw a card. So this thing is just 3 mana, tap it, get the benefit of having a Sylvan Library without having to play it. This is what I was using in the Jessica's Will slot. But I talked to Brian Weissman, and he said that we already use life as a resource so aggressively in the stack with Call of the Ring and Necro and everything, and Ancient Tomb and all the other ways that we're already paying life to get benefit, that he felt like this was just pushing that too far. And I played with it, and it was good for me, and it's great in certain hands, like just grossly powerful. I think it will come up in some of these games. So that's why I'm talking about it. But having said that, perhaps he's right. I do think, for those of you interested in the card, I do think this actually has a place in Commander. And it basically belongs in any deck where you're not using your life quite as aggressively as we are with Death Cloud, Ad Nauseam, Hatred, Necropotence, and Toxic Deluge, and Call of the Ring, and Dark Confidant, and yada, 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 right? So, like, if you're not... thought seizing and vampiric tutoring, and like if you're not killing yourself basically with your deck, this is a colorless Sylvan Library that also makes mana in a format where you can draw 9 cards off of this thing before it actually matters, in theory, right? Which means this thing basically wins the game if it's left unchecked. I think this is a better card than you think. The way you have to think about cards in Commander is that everything, all the costs when they're life, are half, right? Like, so in a 20 life format, pay 4 life is rough, although Sylvan Library is still played sometimes in 20 life formats, but that's a big ask. However, we have double the life, so basically half the price. So this is like 2 life for a card. 2 life for a card in any format is a good deal. And that's effectively what this is in a 40 life format. So if your deck isn't actively killing yourself to the point that it probably doesn't quite make the cut, I highly recommend this. It feels like a card that you can stuff into just about any commander deck pretty well. It's a shame it doesn't have... The last ability should be like 5 mana, gain 5 life or something to make it... to give you like... to make it sort of a... I don't know. I think it would have been a more interesting thing to give you kind of like a way to undo some of the damage would have been cool. But... because, again, when do you have 5 mana? But it'd be neat to have the option. But, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I'm gonna run through some games now, so hopefully you've stuck with me long enough for that, and we'll get started on those. If I see any other differences, I'll point them out, but I don't expect that there are. I think it was just that card. I was playing with the slot. My opponent's playing Kitten here, and you know, obviously, I mean, this deck just does what it does, right? And it does what it does very well. So we have a pretty savage beginning, and here you can see this would have been like Jete in previous builds. Much better as a Westvale Abbey, I think. Alright, so we get turn 1 Arcane Signet. Great start. My opponent gets an Incubation Druid, which will produce 1 mana of any type that land can produce. I rip a Opal off the top, so I just get to go Doretti, make a Defender, and then port my opponent. So, and with that, my opponent decides that they've had enough already, right? They're already getting their mana attacked, and they haven't, so they're stuck. They're going to get, I mean, they have 2 mana. They're going to get their 3rd mana into play versus my 5 or 6 when I hit a land drop next turn. And I have this thing which is going to kill this and chop that back down. In fact, can kill anything that they play if they don't deal with it. Pretty tough spot, so yeah. Most games in Commander seem to end very, very quickly, at least in CEDH. For this reason, you just get so far ahead that frequently the opponent can't catch up. Although this deck is a very good deck at doing exactly that, at catching up. But kind of what I'm getting at is that's one of the other reasons why that card that costs you a bunch of life and seems scary is a little better than you might think, because getting getting some extra mana in cards in the first couple of turns can often be the entire game. Games just are over before, like, we were both at 40 there and it was a concede, right? So anyway, X Underlife X is playing Aminatu the Freshmaker, and I've got a normal hand. This is a yucky, like, where's my 5 mana on turn 2? What's going on here? I'm going to keep, though, because I'm going first. Leading with the Springs here is a little bit risky, but I'm trying to avoid... So it's a little risky because if they do Wasteland me, I don't have any red for Lelia or Fable. On the flip side, I don't want to play Urborg against a black deck unless I know that they have enough black mana. So I'm leading with this, hoping that I'll draw like just a Swamp or some other black source so that I can avoid the Urborg. Anyway, from my opponent's turn, they play Windswept Heath into a Chrome Mox, imprinting a Soul Herder. So this is now a blue and white Mox. So it's a pearl and a sapphire. But I don't find the other black, so I go ahead and hymn them. I mean, they have the Heath, so I know that they can get black mana here. They do, in fact, fetch it. They discard Phyrexian Metamorph, Cloudstone Curio. For their turn, they play a Top and a Tomb. And here, I could Wasteland and play Dark Confidant, but I go for a Fable, and I draw out a Force, exiling Cyclonic Rift, which is really nice to see. And the reason I did that was because I was hoping that if they had... I felt with Fable, I could then Wasteland them and make multiple plays on the following turn. But I also was hoping to hide the Lelia, because if they did play their commander on this turn, which they did, obviously, then I didn't want them to know that I can kill it with the hasted Lelia. Of course, I drew Bombardiers here, but Lelia is still the better choice, especially when I'm missing a land drop, so I'm hoping to hit a land here. I swing in, I instead hit a Duress, so I've now exiled the Duress. But at least this is the NT problem, but it's growing, and I'm not discarding to do it, so it's the NT problem of exiling cards that I may want to play later. So my opponent's turn, they're doing some top shenanigans to try to improve their hand. They get a creature that basically has no abilities. I'm going to swing in, I'm looking for mana, and I finally hit with Lilia. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and play a Confidant, and then I'm going to Demonic Tutor for a Pact, because I have lethal here. So I figured, why mess around with killing their lands when I can just kill my opponent? They only have one card in hand as resources. My opponent's turn, they draw a Temporal Mastery, take another turn, and then they pact into a Mystic Remora, it looks like, but don't play it. I don't fully understand their choice here, but I'm going to go ahead and wasteland them before combat. They have a Path of Exile, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to Calling the Weak, and then in response, I'm going to pact. And now I'm going to trigger Lelia a bunch, and I'm pacting for a very specific card here, and hoping that this all works out. And if it doesn't work out, then I'm going to play like Crucible and replay my Wasteland. So I'm pacting away all these cards that you see here, and I finally packed into exactly enough, by sheer luck, exactly enough Lelia triggers, finding my deflecting SWAT. All right, and with or pretty close to exact C's, right? I get to actually swing in with Lelia and Confidant, and bang, opponent goes to 0. Yeah, exact C's. 27 cards down, and I attack for the 28th card, plus 2 from Confidant makes 30, and my opponent was at 30. So 27 cards down, I actually find the deflecting SWAT right where it needs to be, exactly where it needs to be, and no more. And then remove his blocker, swing in for lethal, and make the kill. Thought that was kind of a fun one. All right, next was That Crazy Melon. And That Crazy Melon is playing Bruna. Not really a competitive commander. 6 mana. Doesn't really do... I don't know. Doesn't do much. I've never seen this in any competitive sense. But cool. You can always, do a home Bruna like that. Anyway, so I've got an insane start, obviously, with the Mana Vault, the Lotus, the Rog. I decided I'm going to wait, I believe, here. No, I'm going to get this down in case they have a Time Twister. So my plan was not to cast my Commander Heroes and get this down in case they have a Time Twister, and then on their next turn I play Port, and then I just port them, so they play their second land, I port them. I assume they play their second land and do nothing to hold up a counterspell. I play Port, I port them during their upkeep. They draw and play a land, so they're still on 2 mana. I play City of Brass, port them again, taking them down to 1 if I want to. But I think the plan was after the port turn, play the City of Brass, cast the Demonic Tutor, and grab myself a deflecting SWAT, and then go ahead and slam the commander, draw my cards, and do my thing. Alternately, I was just gonna play a land next turn, not play Port, play City of Brass, end of turn ad nauseum. If presumably they counter it, and then on my turn play Port, play Commander off Lotus. Either way, opponent conceded, and I move on to a 3-for with Big Gay Bowser. And let's see what happens here. Alright, so my opponent's playing Sauron the Dark Lord. And I've got a pretty fast start. It's almost perfect, but I don't have a 3rd artifact, although I can certainly cast artifacts cheap if I get a shop. But I do have this as a red land, so I've got 1, 2, 3 mana, which means I'm close to having something here. Too close to mulligan, right? So I just want to be careful about using my Strip Mine aggressively here. My opponent plays a Foreboding Ruins and reveals a Mountain. I draw Hatred for the turn, so that's another possible route to victory. But I decide I'm just gonna play this tapped, play the Opal, and see what happens over there. If an island comes down, might change my play. I don't see an island, so I go for the Chrome Mox here, imprint the Hatred, and Diabolic Intent off of the Rip there, grabbing the Staff of Completion. So here I wanted to test the card, so I grab it, slam it into play, and I now turn on my Mox Opal, but I also have tap to draw a card, or tap to add a mana to my mana pool. So let's see what happens. Opponent plays a Looter that makes Orcs. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a card. And then for my turn, I'm going to Imperial Seal for whatever I'd like here, which I believe is... first I have to draw it. There we go. Kill the Lotus. Yep. Let's get the Lotus down. Let's go for Liliana won't work here, not with the Orc, so let's get Necro down. Necro sticks. So I no longer need to pay 4 more life to draw a card. I now have, I can pay 1 life to draw a card thanks to Necro, which was enabled by the 8 life that I paid for the Staff of Completion, of course. There we go. I'm drawing all the self-damaging cards. Mount Doom, Ad Nauseam, Mana Crypt, Necro, Staff, all of it. Opponent's looting, making a bigger orc, and plays a land, and other than that, doesn't seem to have a reanimator or anything. They might be hurting for colored mana. This might be what's going on over there. It's what it seems to be. I'm going to go ahead and play a GPS, a Godpharaoh statue. It sticks, so I'm going to play Liliana next. Make them sacrifice their orc, or, well, creature of their choice, but they choose the orc. And then I'll play Fable to block and go ahead and just grab some more cards with Necro. Interestingly here, I haven't tapped the staff, but I can. And one of the ways that I can use it is I can use it to put a counter on Lily and Fable. I can proliferate. I could also use it to kill my own Necro here. Or I could just not use it and wait and then use it for my commander later. So my opponent loots again. And at the end of their turn, I go ahead and proliferate. So that triggers the Fable immediately, which allows me to throw away some cards that might not be great at the current life total I'm at, and which have no target, like the Vandal Blast. And I also get an extra counter on Liliana. Alright. I flip. During my upkeep, I go ahead and Necro, guessing about how many cards I want. And then I sacrifice the Necro and draw for my draw step, which I now have back. And I've already flipped my Fable right away. I've got a Chaos Defiler that off the top from my actual draw step, which I return to myself. So we'll go ahead and run out a bunch of goodies and produce a ton of mana. Then go ahead and cast ourselves a lovely little Chaos Defiler is coming to the party for sure. Oh, Tavish first, in this case. Alright. Now the big man comes down. We'll go ahead and destroy the looter. Honor-worn Shaku, that thing. Play a Curse of Opulence. Slam down Broadside Bombardiers. Swinging with the Bombardiers. And the Treasure Maker. And let's get rid of the Mana Crypt over there. That's not so great when you're at 8 life. Thank you, Bombardiers. Mana Crypt, thank you for your service. And thank you, Bombardiers, for getting rid of it. And we'll go ahead and play Rog here, untap, sacrifice, draw some more cards, make each of us discard, and I throw away Call of the Ring, which I'm definitely not going to be using at this life total. I will, however, Thoughtseize my opponent, taking their Sauron's Ransom and leaving them with just Chart a Course and some mana. And then remember, I had Necroed, and boom, I'm right back to 7 cards. I Necroed during my upkeep, as you'll recall. So the only card that might hurt me at this point is the Mana Vault. I can easily eat it with the Bombardiers, or I could just untap it if I wish. Given that I have the Shaku, it's trivial to untap that thing, and so we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, before drawing, and then him my opponent's last 2 cards out of their hand, Chart a Course and Blasphemous Act, hit the bin. Go ahead and play a Karn there. Use it to untap the Shaku. Let's make something into a creature. I'm going to copy the Chaos Defiler. I now have that thing going where I can just keep Chaos Defiling my opponent. Instead, I'm just going to swing in, let the damage hit from the Chaos Defiler, and then at the end of combat, I'll activate Bombardiers. And so I'm going to hit him with this for 5, and then at the end of combat, I'm going to throw it at him for another 7. Just a massive amount of damage, right? We're just going to close this game out very, very quickly. They take another point from the Godpharaoh statue that's pinning them down. And that's it. So I don't know if you recall watching this deck operate in the past, but one of the problems with it had been, well, I don't want to say problems, but one of the features of it, which was not as good as you'd want it to be, was that it was very slow to close out the game. Like, you'd get somebody in the box, but they would have time to slowly dig themselves out of the box. This, on the other hand, puts insane amounts of pressure on the opponent. And like, if my opponent was to kill, if they were to kill this, if they were to kill everything except for the Bombardiers and the Godpharaoh statue, right? hell, if they were to kill everything except for the Bombardiers and the Gilded Lotus, right? Some magical card they drew that said kill everything except Bombardiers and Lotus. The Lotus would deal 7 to them, and the Bombardiers would deal 2 more, making 9 damage. My opponent would still die with just those 2 permanents in play. Nothing else. Literally nothing else. Card is pretty gnarly. Anyway, so that was game 1. And game 2 against Big Gay Bowser here is about to start. Opponent's playing the same deck, the Dark Lord. However, I won the die roll, and my opponent just, I guess he started, he mulliganed to 5 and conceded, which is fair enough. Incidentally, with a hand like this, the way to sequence this is 100% you go Cliffs, Thoughtseize, and you try to take out a Soul Ring or other fast mana, and you throw down Rog, and then on the next turn, you play Curse of Opulence, attack with Rog, get a token, then play City of Traders, cast Lelia. You can't swing twice, but you've now double developed. And then from there you can swing in, get your token, whatever's on top of your library, and you can go ahead and, more than likely cast your Tavish. So that's the way that we would have played that out if I had been able to. Instead, he just concedes and moves into game 3 there. That was very similar to the one loss that the decks actually had. And here I don't have a crazy start, right? And I decide, you know what, let's keep it and see what happens. It has potential, but it's not a fast start. But it has Call of the Ring on turn 2, so we can start drawing extra cards early, conceivably. And my opponent's got a Soul Ring start, and I don't have Artifact Kill. So yeah, this is definitely, we've got ourselves a game here. So I fetched it into turn Blood Crypt. Top deck a Shaku, which makes this start much quicker than it otherwise would be. Shaku is now my own Soul Ring, right? Because taps for 1+1 off Rog makes 2. And just like that, we're in parity on usable mana, and technically I have even more, especially if I play the Urborg. I can, even if I don't have an artifact, I can turn the Workshop into some mana. So now I have more mana and more cards, despite not having, despite my opponent having a Soul Ring. We'll get Torque down, and then I could go for it here, but why do that when I have the ability to just end of turn ad nauseum? Why run out my commander into double blue, right? Seems like a mistake, possibly. Opponent passes for the turn, and I decide, yeah, there's one counter spell in the game, Mana Drain, which severely punishes me here, but very few others. The rest just counter, and then I could get my commander down. So I take the risk. No counter is forthcoming. So I add Naz up to Strip Mine there, stopping at 18 life. I don't even pay life for the Call of the Ring. If I would have more cards, I would have paid more life during the ad nauseum. Vamp during upkeep. Grab a statue to potentially lock my opponent out. I'm going to run out some Chrome Moxes and stuff, and then I want to go ahead and Thoughtseize my opponent here. They counterspell, I Inquisition, they concede. Don't ask me, because I can't tell you why in the hell I imprinted Molten Collapse and left them with their Soul Ring. That was 100% like a Dunderhead move. What I needed to do there was go ahead and the rest and get it counterspelled, and then imprint the Opposition Agent, or basically anything other than what I did, but we got there in the end. Don't be like me. Kill your opponent's Soul Rings after you had nauseum. All right. So next is my opponent. So BJ, or Big A Bowser there, I think had enough for a bit. And I get Broshaw, who is playing the Dragon. And my hand is disgusting. Now, I think the correct way to... This is a funny hand because you could actually almost... You can almost turn 2 Hatred kill the opponent here, and that might be correct. In fact, there's ways to do that. Like, for example, we could go Dark Ritual, Diabolic Intent, sack Rog, grab a Soul Ring, play the Soul Ring off the 1 black that's remaining, use the Soul Ring to play Rog, and then on the next turn, we just need to draw a black at that point, and then we cast Grim Monolith off the Soul Ring, tap for 5, and Hatred kill the opponent. There are other ways you could sequence this, but I decided to just be... I'm kind of not really... I saw this, and I wasn't taking it seriously, so I just go all in. This is really not the way to play this out. The sequence I just outlined is probably a lot better. But, you know, I do it, so what the heck. And it works, you know, they don't force a will kill me. Does, on the other hand, get a hell of a start, and I realize, ooh, I should probably not consider this to be a buy when my opponent's starting out with super fast starts. That means they brought a competitive deck. They just chose a not really competitive commander. I almost slammed Lelia here and then realized, wait a minute, I've got K command. Let's kill that mana crypt. Taking a clever impersonator out of their hand as well. Alright, opponent's down to 3 mana here. A little bit more manageable. I play Dragon's Horde. Technically better than the card. It's a better target than the one you're about to see me. I have cast into the fire. I need to kill the Dragon's Horde, but honestly, I played this game pretty poorly. The last couple games, I really didn't play that well. Swinging with Lelia here. I played CEDH traders before I attacked, so, you know, just mistakes were made. I exile Felwar Stone rather than Dragon's Horde. Just, what am I doing? This is just bad. But, you know, do I win? Yeah, but I'm not proud of this win, I guess you could say. Alright, I swing in for some more damage and pressure. Find myself a Dust Bowl. It's beautiful. I managed to not play my land before attacking, finally. So I play Dust Bowl. It puts City of Traders' trigger on the stack to sacrifice it. But then I go ahead and eat it with the Dust Bowl instead of sacrificing it, taking out their Ketria Triumph. For the 3rd turn in a row, destroying mana, buying time. The opponent plays a Nicol Bolas, triggers their dragon thing because I let them. I go ahead and exile the card, pitch a Fire Covenant to it, and my opponent concedes. Of course, had they not conceded, they're dead. If they don't have Force of Will or something along those lines, because I have Hatred, and I have more damage in play than they have life total. So I probably should have pitched Workshop here. Honestly, I guess I kept it because I wanted to feed it to Dust Bowl, potentially, but I wouldn't say that I was playing my best here. I am rusty, to be fair. I haven't played Commander in a while. My next opponent, Chief Chieftain, is asked me if I enjoy the format and had some questions about why am I playing a deck this aggressive, and I totally understood their questions. We had a conversation, and I actually pointed them out to a thread on Reddit. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Just checking out some backpack battles. So here on Reddit, for those of you interested, there's a competitive EDH discussion that was started by Brian Weissman. And I have sort of gotten involved with a bit of discussion, but I left it kind of open-ended. Curious to see what other people think before I necessarily pour my thoughts into the format. And basically the idea here is, what if we could influence a ban list for the 1v1 experience online? Would you want to do it? And if you would, why would you want to do it, and how would you do it? Those are 2 separate questions. So you could answer either half of that question, or, you know, like, what would be your goals in crafting your ban list? For example, maybe you are like, yeah, this is dumb. Why don't we just open it up, play Lotus and all that stuff? Online, these cards are dirt cheap, and it would make the format far more interesting. That's one route you could go. Another route you could go is like, oh no, I hate all the variants, and I want to like reduce that significantly. So let's take out all the fast mana, take out the Soul Rings, and that's another route you could go. Or you could not worry about either one of those, and you could say, well, let's just remove the weird cards like Coalition Victory, and let's take Biorhythm off the list, and maybe let's add some more cards that probably need to be there, like Tevish and Rog, or Minsk and Boo, or Thassa's Oracle. So that's another route you could go. Or you could do anything in between, right? So the first thing to do would be identify why you, like, what your goals are, like what sort of environment you want to be playing in, and why, to get us thinking about that. And then the second one would be, okay, how do I get to those goals? And that's kind of what my post here is about. And I haven't identified, I've neither identified my goals, nor have I identified changes I would want to make yet in this conversation, because I'm trying to find out what other people's goals are for the format and what their ideas are before I necessarily jump into mine. So if you have some, please look for this thread in Reddit and, you know, post some stuff in there. Anyway, getting back to Chief Chieftain, I actually ended up messaging him with that link saying, we're trying to potentially affect change in the format, but it's a heavy, like, it's a Sisyphean task, it feels like sometimes, and we may not get there, but I told him it's the prisoner's dilemma. If I don't play a fully powered deck, then I just lose all day to fully powered decks. So I have to play a fully powered deck, but then I'm the problem. So I can't agree, however, not to be part of the problem, because otherwise I'm on the receiving end, and being on the receiving end sucks even worse than being part of the problem. So the way to be part of the solution is that conversation on Reddit and other methods that we can use to actually change things, rather than trying to create some sort of environment in an online space where we all agree to be gentlemen and kill each other like gentlemen. Like, it's not realistic. That you cannot socialize a solution online in MTGO. It has to be done at the ban list level, and that part can be social. That discussion can be socialized through Reddit. So hopefully you take place in that conversation, or other methods. But that's where the conversation was started. So that's where we're at. You can see I'm still using the staff over the Jessica's Will. I'm still not 100% sure that this isn't the correct card, but we'll see. And my opponent's playing Heliod, Sun Crown. It's just not. It's just not serious, right? Like, this is just not a serious commander. But you can always get a winning draw with enough Soul Ring and other such action. Anyway, for me here, I'm just going to run off the staff. Remember, this thing taps for mana too, so I played a mana source and a card drawing spell on turn 1. Opponent has a life gain card. It's just, of course, that allows me to find myself a Mox Amber, 2 cards down, which then means that I can slam a turn to Guild Artisan, Urza's Saga, Godfarrow's Statue. Now my opponent can only play 0 drops at the moment. That starts the whole conversation with my opponent. I run out of signature, maybe a little bit early. I probably should have done that after the fact, because I might draw cards and then want to use that additional workshop mana that I didn't spend. But I'll probably manage to win this game somehow anyway. All right, so I draw some extra cards. Not that I excuse poor decision making with that. I think that's a bit of a cop out. You should always try to make the best decision possible. I go into Inquisition my opponent, and I'm about to take whatever, and they concede at that point. Obviously, I still have more plays I can make. I can proliferate. I can draw cards. I can use it for mana. I can make Saga tokens. I can replay my commander. I can do whatever I want. I can Molten Collapse away this card. I was going to let him take the Teferi's Protection, let him have their 1-drop, and then they play their 1-drop, and then I kill the creature and this thing with Descend was the plan, but we never get there. Interestingly, you can also proliferate with this thing onto a Saga. So like if my opponent went Wasteland targeting Saga, I could tap 2 tokens, make a creature, then proliferate, put a counter on Teferi's Shot, put a counter on Saga. It would hit its 3rd counter with the Wasteland on the stack, kill itself, and go get me a Soul Ring or whatever. So in this case, I would get a Skull Clamp. But that is a thing that you can do, which is very cool with the staff. So it's an interesting card. Certainly better here than the thing about it that makes it not good potentially is what about when you're not drawing it early and you're not ahead, when you don't have the life to use it. How often is that going to come up, right? How bad is it going to be under those circumstances? And that's where the Jessica's Will potentially comes into play, or whatever the future holds for us when we get more sets to choose from. Unless somebody in the, if you have a suggestion, by all means, I'm always interested in that. Maybe you have an idea that I've been combing through old cards just looking, but haven't found anything yet to improve upon the situation. Anyway, here my opponent, El Manso Gonzo, is playing Lazav, Wearer of Faces. This is a serious threat, but it is not a commander necessarily that I would consider to be, exceptional by any means. But it is cheap, and it does make cards and potentially mana if it's copying the right thing. It's in the best colors. It has all that going for it, but I think without red, you're going to have a tough time with a fast start from your opponent. It's hard for you to interact with that in those colors. But more importantly, if you don't get a fast start, yourself, then you're not. It's much harder to do, I think, in blue-black than it is in black-red, I think. And while it does draw cards, it draws them a little bit slower because you have to make the clue and then sack the clue to draw. And that takes a little bit of time, versus Tevish, where it's more expensive on the front end, but then you can immediately just start drawing 3 cards, 2 cards, 2 cards, that kind of thing. But we'll see how it goes. So this definitely represents a big threat. I did win the die roll, and I have an excellent hand, so we're going to go ahead and keep. Lead off with Confluence, Rog, Amber, Rag, and Curse. What a start. And my opponent has Force of Will with a Pact for the Ragavan, so I don't get to do that. Leads up, plays an Underground Sea. I am going to attack, but then I miss my land drop here. Let's try to him my opponent. They're down 2 cards from the Force of Will. Let's take 2 more. I get Mana Drain, Wash Away. Very significant, that I didn't try to build up for Tevish here. Opponent then plays a Lazav. And I'm still missing mana. Alright, well, I can make a token here. And now I'm afraid because they're going to hit my... I don't want them cloning my Ragavan, so I go ahead and kill their commander, and they rip Crypt. Or they already had one, because they also have a Mana Vault. Crap. Not good. They're down to 1 card, but I do not like getting hit at all with Ragavan. So I go ahead and make a Rakdos Signet into a Dark Confidant. But I can't really profitably block here. So I'm going to throw away my card drawing to, whatever they rag. I don't think I can. I'm going to have to let them clone my Ragavan, make a clue. So they're going to draw a card for that. Clone the Ragavan. They do it after I decide not to block. And they hit Shattering Spree. Ugh. Killing my Mox Amber here. I do find a land here. I get to swing in with Confidant. I get up to 4 mana. They've got 2 cards in hand. I don't know what they are. So I just Mind Twist them, and it's just 2 mana sources. Sure kind of wish I had played the Dynamo at that point. I'm losing this game. Opponent had a Saga last turn also, so now that's on 2. Just gross. I don't want to get hit by Ragavan again. I'm going to try to stop it, so I chump. And my opponent sacks a clue. And, yeah. They've got a Shattering Spree under there now, so if they get more red mana, I'm going to pause. If they get more red mana, they're going to get to play that. It's so weird how... Because you can become a copy of a creature card exiled. Oh, no. It can't copy a Shattering Spree, but it can be any creature that gets exiled. So here I'm really pleased to see that my opponent top-decked and played a 6-drop that will win the game if it's not addressed right now, because it's 3 mana to draw 7 cards, which is insane. And if you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library face down, return them, and lose that much life. So basically, this thing's just kind of like a... it's actually very similar to a... Grizzlebrand in a sense. You could probably build a pretty busted deck around this card now that I think about it. Anyway, fortunately, of course, we know I have the Toxic Deluge, so I'm going to be able to deal with both problems for now. I do Confidant into Bombardiers and find a land, thankfully. All right, let's go ahead and fetch first, and then I'm going to go ahead and play a Dynamo, swing in with a Confidant so I can get my token here. Kind of my opponent, they block and save me 2 life, so it puts 2 damage on that thing. Not that that was a misplay on their part, that was the correct play. And I go ahead and deluge away their board. Play a Rog with the last 2 mana floating, which means I'll get to keep using the Curse. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're even on mana finally, till they untap their Vault. They do have a Saga though, and fetch themselves a Pithing Needle naming Tevish, and with their top deck, slam a Lazav. Okay, I can deal with that. I was really scared there. I didn't know what was coming. Fortunately, Bombardiers is nutty. I don't believe I drew a by force here. I believe we're getting into bugged game territory. I think we're going to bug out. But what ended up happening is I'm pretty sure I drew like a mana source and played... Yeah, I ended up playing Tevish Zot. Bombardiers swings. I sack the Rakdos Signet, kill the Lazav, which is now going to cost 8 mana with the Bombardiers. and put my opponent in a situation where they can never play their commander and have it not die. And then shortly after that, I can't remember what it was, but I ended up finding either removal for Pithing Needle or some other source of card advantage, and my opponent conceded. But they were already in a pretty bad spot because of the Bombardiers locking them out from their Azov. So then my opponent, that was Almanzo Gonzo. I play 2 more games, and then I finish up with that individual as well. And we have an excellent, that was a tough game, and then we have an excellent final game as well. Hopefully it won't bug out. So let's go to Cephalid Wizard 1 before Almanzo Gonzo's, the final game there. Okay. My opponent's playing Braid, so at the beginning of their end step, they may sacrifice a permanent. And if they do, then the opponent, me, may sacrifice a permanent which shares a card type with it. If I don't, then I lose 2 life and they draw a card. So this is a card drawing engine if you have some stuff you can sacrifice. Like you want to sacrifice a creature token and say, sacrifice a creature or give me a card. You want to do, sacrifice a treasure, say kill one of your artifacts or give me a card, that kind of thing. So it is a funky card drawing engine. It's an interesting card. Could be a card I could play in here, to be quite honest. But let's see how it goes. Alright, well, they Dark Ritual it out, so, I'm going to be under pressure here. So end step, they don't sacrifice anything, obviously not going to kill itself. And I have a kind of weak start. I'm going to clamp, and I end up having to discard. I throw away a Cloud. Opponent has a Mycosynth Wellspring, a great card to feed the Braids, so they get to grab a swamp, swing at the end of their turn, sack the swamp, or Wellspring rather, draw an extra card, deal 2 to me, and grab a second swamp. Pretty gnarly. I Inquisition them and see nothing, so now I'm down another card and just play Rog and pass. And so what I saw over there was, let's take the 2 swamps I knew about. So this is what I saw. The 3rd swamp, yeah. So this is what I know that they have, and we'll check off 1 swamp. I go ahead and play a Curse, swing in and make a gold token. It looks like the coast is clear here, so I look like I have free reign to do whatever I want. So I'm going to just go ahead and get mana development going and draw some more cards. It does take me off of Curse, unfortunately, unless I find a hit here. I don't, so I'm off Curse for a bit, but I got to dig. Opponent misses an attack here. Not that it really matters too much. Plays a Defiler of Flesh, which is basically a card that I need to kill. Fortunately, I've got that covered. Let's Chaos Defiler that thing away. And then clamp the Chaos Defiler and pass. I've now got a 6/3 who, when it dies, draws me 2 cards and destroys one of my opponent's permanent. And my opponent has a card that makes me sacrifice things, which is pretty good, obviously. They play Ravenous Chupacabra, which is an interesting card. We'll check off the other swamp. Kills my Chaos Defiler. Of course, I kill their commander here with the Chaos Defiler ability and draw 2 cards. Opponent's 3 cards that I know about, and the rest are questions. So during my upkeep, I'm going to vamp. No Death Cloud for me to get here, but I can get a Mind Twist instead. And let's take care of, let's dismiss all cards because they're going into the bin. Alright, and off they go. Incidentally, I'm dead in a 20 life game here, but at 40 I'm okay. Right? And pass for the turn. So my opponent's down to top decking now. Finds a land, which allows them. Well, actually, I guess they had an extra land, so they can play their Braids here. Remember, they can sacrifice lands too, which is interesting. So they send in the Chupacabra. I would, if I'm them, I sacrifice the Chupacabra. It's not doing much here, and I can't match them. But they choose to do exactly that. So I lose 2 more life, and they draw a card. All right. So for my turn, I'm going to go ahead and. Excuse me for the yawns. Finally get my commander down. Make some thralls. We can start clamping if we want to. Alright, so I find a Mana Crypt. The Ready. I'm going to go ahead and the Ready that away with the Mana Crypt mana. K-Command, making my opponent discard the last card in their hand. And I return Chaos Defiler. I have never used that K-Command ability, I don't think, to return a creature. But when you have a card like Chaos Defiler, it's just kind of awesome. Opponent sacrifice a land, I match them so that they still have no cards in hand. Slam a Chaos Defiler, once again kill. I mean, at this point, they're not getting any permanents into play. Even if they had like a Phyrexian Arena, which typically would have been, you know, safe from my tender administrations here, wouldn't have stopped. It wouldn't have stopped. If they had, like, I guess their best play would have been something like Necropotence or whatever. And then I could have killed that and Imperial Sealed for a Winter Orb and locked them into the Orb. But, yeah, just awesome. Very nice interaction between Kolaghan's Command and Chaos Defiler. And you saw how this was not like a crazy deck or anything for me to be beating, but you saw how really good it was at just controlling the board. And providing me a pretty big beat stick. You know, if my opponent had just played a Planeswalker there, assuming it didn't kill my Chaos Defiler, it would have been attacked by the 5/4 and just probably died on the spot. So, alright. Next is Seawolf607 playing Murico, the Tiger's Shadow, a card that Brian Weissman has built a deck around in the past. And I win the die roll. I've got a risky keep in the sense that I don't have colored mana, but it's a very fast keep, and I will get colored mana off of the Saga if I need to, and I may. But for now, I mean, I can use it to make some threats. Well, I missed on colored mana. We'll pass my opponent's first turn Island Swamp into Sorceress Spyglass. I activate Saga here, and then they named City of Traders, and I asked them if they were aware that that doesn't actually prevent the mana source. It's not a Phyrexian whatever. And it wouldn't stop a land anyway, even if it was the Phyrexian, the 2-mana guy. But anyway, we have a little conversation about it, and I was like, well, he goes, I don't know what's in your deck, and I want to guess. And I was like, I kind of pointed out, well, you could name Tevish. There's also a Saga in play making robots. And he goes, oh, yeah, you know what? That was a bit of a misplay. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it happens. I've made mistakes too. Anyway, I draw Hatred for the turn. But if you're wondering why that's a City of Traders, it was a mistake. Alright, I grab my Mox Opal, use it to play Curse of Opulence, which will now generate plenty of mana of other colors. I could slam Lelia here, but I'm actually going to wait because I can vamp at the end of my opponent's turn and then I can go for Lelia, swing in, make a token, and, you know, the thing, Tainted Pact. So if this wasn't already enough of an aggressive position, I just push it even further with the Lelia. And if this fails, like if they somehow were to have countered the Tainted Pact and then they get hit for some damage, I left the construct that can attack back specifically so I can block, and then on the next turn I swing in and Hatred and kill him that way instead. So that was the game plan anyway, but no need to worry about that. We just packed Lelia into a 32-32 plus 4, -1, and we're done. And the card I get is Godpharaoh's Statue, because I mean I got a ton of mana. It was actually not the card I intended to get. I intended to get. I thought I was grabbing the Winter Orb and putting him to 0. That way, if they had something like if they had what might they have? It's 1/3. It's 3 colorless and a black instant. If you control a swamp, you can pay 4 life to kill a non-black creature. So that was the one card I could think of that they might have. And if they did have that, I wanted to grab the Winter Orb. I thought I was grabbing the Winter Orb, and then I just orbed them here. And then next turn, untap this, make a token, and do the Hatred thing. But like I said, it turns out that my opponent didn't have anything. So, and I grabbed the wrong card. So, oops. And then finally, we have this last round against El Manso Gonzo. And playing Lazav once again. Again, a very threatening commander. I have an excellent hand, of course. Also, El Manso Gonzo, when he lost the last game, he actually stated, that's why, oh, okay, I remember now what happened. We were at, he hadn't necessarily conceded. We were at a point where I'd kind of turned the corner, but I definitely wasn't, I hadn't like won, right? I just had the Bombardiers controlling him. He had a delivery guy and he mentioned it to me, and I waited like 5 minutes, but then he timed out. So that's why the other one was buggy, because it was a timeout victory. So hopefully this one will not be buggy. My opponent wins the roll. He's going first with a very fast start once again. Without even tutoring for it, it just came to hand, which makes sense. I mean, I do the same thing. All right, so I'll play Mana Vault here. Let's get Rog out. and pass to the... I could play Shaku, and then I could like tap it and untap it, and I'd do that if I had something to do with the mana, but otherwise I'm not going to run a Shaku. I just want... Like, I'm hoping my opponent just doesn't make it do... more mana. Doesn't do anything too crazy here. I'm worried about the double blue. So I'm trying to navigate around that. I find Call of the Ring, which is an excellent way to do that. So I bait with the Shaku, it sticks. So I go for Call of the Ring, it sticks. So I go for Fetch. And I should have got... I wished I had gotten red here also. You'll see how that hurts me later. But yeah, so I play Shaku and it sticks. Or maybe I shouldn't have got black-red. That's fine. So I've got Call of the Ring, Confidant, Shaku in that turn. Good development. And now I'm up to like 3 cards per turn. Or am I? Opponent Bowmasters away the Confidant. I can't really afford to pay for the Call of the Ring and kill my Ring Bearer in order to draw a card. That doesn't make sense. And I'm holding this Fable, but Fable is not looking super hot here. And I can't remember. We are going to bug out because I did draw a... I think I play... I can't remember what I play here. Did I play the Fable? Ah, man, we're going to bug out. This sucks. This was an excellent game. It was kind of the one that I really wanted. Let's see if we can skip ahead. Let's see if I can fix it in any way. No, I can't. Anyway, for my opponent's turn, I think I play Fable and pass. And for my opponent's turn, they play Notion Thief. They just tap Crypt, land, and play Notion Thief. So now I really can't, I really can't be drawing. Can't draw off the Fable, can't draw off the Call of the Ring, right? So, oh, they play Notion Thief, land, Pithing Needle, naming Bullszat. So they just lock down, they lock down my Call of the Ring, my Fable, and my Tevish. I get GPS down, I think, and then we kind of sit, and they play their Lazav or whatever, maybe. No, I think we just kind of sit and we stare at each other for a little bit. They've got Bowmasters, the 3-1. I've got a 1-1, and I make a joke about how my Grey Ogre is holding off their whole army, you know. And Grey Ogre is how relevant it is right now. He says it's a menace. I say yes, OP must ban. And then my opponent says you found a good game. Well, that's because I don't play Godfrey's statue. What I do instead is I top deck, and I top deck Death Cloud. And so I swing in. I make this the Ring Bearer so that I won't draw a card. Because remember, when your Ring Bearer attacks, you loot. You have to. So I make this the Ring Bearer so that I can attack with the other goblin, the one that makes a treasure off of Fable. I attack, and my hand at that point is Godfrey's statue. I want to say Mox Diamond and the Death Cloud. And I swing in, and I don't even have a Godfrey's statue. I swear this was not Godfrey's statue. Anyway, I swing in though, and my opponent opts not to block, so I get a treasure. And then I just sack everything, and I cloud. At that point, my opponent had 4 land. Yeah, he had land. So he had land, Pithing Needle were his straws. And so at that point, he has 4 lands in play: Pithing Needle, Lazav, Bowmaster's Token, Guy. Which is exactly 4 creatures and 4 others. And my 2/2 dies, and then I just blow a Death Cloud on 4, killing everything except for my opponent's, mana. But it unlocks my Call of the Ring, and my Fable is going to flip on the next turn. So I'm going to have a flipped Fable, a Call of the Ring is going to become the creature. I've also got the Shaku, and at that point he says, "You found it, good game," and I say, "Good game." I think I snuck a Tevish out on that turn or one of the turns, and I was using it with Honor-Worn Shaku as the world's worst Llanowar elf. It was a 5 mana creature. Tap to add 1 colorless to your mana pool, thanks to Honor-Worn Shaku. That's how I was using my Tevish, because of the Pithing Needle. So that's kind of what you missed. It was pretty exciting and fun, but as I said, the deck's super resilient. So that's all I've got. What do you think? Do you think that the Jessica's Will should be that Staff of Completion? Did you like the performance that you saw there? Do you think that the performance that you saw there is representative of how good it will always be, or will it be, pretty bad at times? Like, certainly against the Arkish Bowmasters Notion Thief board, Staff of Completion's ability to draw cards is pretty mediocre. The Proliferate's not doing much. The mana, I guess, is something. On the other hand, Jessica's Will on that board exiles, and so it would allow me to at least go 3 cards deeper into my library and look for solutions. In that specific scenario, the Will would be a better card. So I don't really know what the answer is, but I'm curious. Maybe you do, or maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's some card that is really popular or strong that you're aware of that I simply have overlooked. Whatever the case, I look forward to your comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.